Welcome everybody to tonight's Parent Involvement Committee meeting. We'll start with our land acknowledgement. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Jordina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. Now, the DDSB Human Rights and Equity Statement. The Durham District School Board is committed to learning environments that are safe, welcoming, respectful, equitable, accessible, inclusive, and free from discrimination while placing human rights and equity at the center. Our Indigenous Rights Statement. The Durham District School Board recognizes Indigenous rights are distinct. In the exercise of those rights, Indigenous staff and students shall not be subjected to actions with the aim or effect of depriving these distinct rights.
I'm going to present my screen, Jim, so that our attendees can see the agenda.
Please.
Okay. Oh, just a second. Oh, I'm not familiar with Zoom as much. Here it is. Share.
Perfect. Thanks, Margaret.
That's okay.
So there's tonight's agenda. We'd like to move for approval of tonight's agenda. Thank everybody for approval.
I approve it.
Thank you so much. And has everybody had the chance to review the minutes of the last meeting? Any additions or corrections? Perfect. Do we have somebody who will please move to approve the minutes from last meeting as well?
I'll second.
Thank you. We'll move forward with our DDSB system updates.
Okay, so that's myself. I'm going to do an update. So the presentation I'm going to give is just a summary of a presentation that we did to our Board of Trustees in January, which gave our Board of Trustees the operational plan for our schools and for this year, for our DDSB organization this year. And so I think as we move towards planning our events for our parents, it's important that we're just aware of what our operational goals are. And so it's going to be a very quick summary of the presentation that we as superintendents gave to the trustees in January. So as you can see on the screen, we had previously a multi-year Ignite Learning Strategic Plan that talked about success, equity, well-being, leadership, engagement, innovation. Those were the areas that we were working under for that plan. That plan has been extended to the year 2023 in light of the pandemic, and we want to make sure that we can really implement and complete the strategic plan that we had devised in 2018. So what we have done, though, is we have reduced the 6 areas that we're looking at. We have encompassed them into two key outcomes that we're looking at. So the analysis of student achievement and well-being indicators the student success census, the workforce census. The findings that we had from these census, both internal to DDSB and provincially, tell us that discriminatory barriers exist within learning and our working environment. So there's just two outcomes that we want to really look at. It's student learning and well-being and people and culture. Professional discourse within forward-thinking districts, which I think DDSB is a forward-thinking district, has moved beyond the debate as to whether barriers exist towards finding sustainable actions in structural evolution rooted in anti-oppressive and anti-racist ideologies. So we must all act as a system, parents, students, educators, all of our stakeholders. We must act together to prevent disproportionate outcomes for all students and families and employees. So the two major outcomes, student learning and well-being, and people and culture. And if you look at the graphic, you see the Indigenous rights and human rights at the center. That's the umbrella that's going to direct everything that we do. And it moves out to student learning, well-being, people and culture. And then we've got the success, innovation, engagement, Indigenous education, equity, well-being, and just give me a second, and leadership. The last one escaped my mind. So our operational plan reflects two key outcomes, as I said, two key outcome areas to build coherence where staff understand the relationship between our strategic pillars. That's the 6 pillars that really surround our student learning and well-being and our people and culture. And so that we can see the evidence of that relationship in our key strategies. The natural integration of our work then helps to hold everyone accountable in our system. The student learning and well-being outcome descriptor ensures that student voice and identities are honored in innovative environments that are focused on inquiry, well-being, and global citizenship. School cultures engage students to thrive academically, socially, physically, and emotionally. And in people and culture, the descriptor empowers staff and to contribute to an organizational culture through respectful relationships and processes that are inclusive, responsive, fair, and equitable. So there are some guiding principles that will support our work at the Durham District School Board. First, we're going to integrate and embed Indigenous rights and human rights and equity into all of our work. This includes examining and addressing all forms of discriminatory and racist barriers. To do this, we will engage with DDSB communities, students, families, employees, and community partners. Their unique experiences and perspective will help shape what we do and how we do it, and will make the concept of nothing about us without us come to life in our planning and in our decisions. We'll also be open and transparent about what we're doing, and we'll report on our progress to this committee as well as to our wider community. Central to our model is the importance of the inquiry cycle: learn, plan, act, observe, assess, and reflect. And this cycle will allow us to understand that changes in behavior are an indicator of authentic learning. Our work then will stress integration, collaboration, coherence, and accountability, but also impact, because we believe that an increased emphasis on our responsibilities and accountability means that we will also be able to focus and celebrate our impact. So we're really excited as a team at DDSB about the opportunity to engage in our work in this integrated fashion. A little bit more about people and culture. We are committed to providing services, workplace, and learning environments that center Indigenous rights and are welcoming, respectful, and free from discrimination and anti-Indigenous racism. Implementation of the Indigenous education policy and procedure is a focus for our board at this time, and will include ongoing opportunities for all employees at all levels of the organization to learn about Indigenous rights and the ongoing impacts of colonization on our system of education. This learning will guide the identification and removal of systemic barriers in the day-to-day practices. We're focusing on eliminating barriers that will impede student achievement for our students. There's also a focus on human rights, anti-discrimination, anti-racism. So we're going to continue to support ongoing learning for all employees to better understand our collective roles and responsibilities around human rights and anti-discrimination, anti-racism in our learning and in our working environments. It's a real focus for us, once again, at all levels of the organization. And so to support individual and shared organizational responsibilities, we will implement human rights action plans in all system departments. So it's not just about working with the kids in the classroom. We want all of the levels of our organization to have a human rights action plan so that we can ensure that the DDSB is a safe and welcoming environment for all. Create a safe and respectful workplace, as we read in our human rights statement at the beginning. That's really one of our focus, to ensure that the DDSB is safe and welcoming for all that enter into our building, whether they're employees or community partners or students. Everyone must feel safe. And so we all have a right to a safe and working and respectful environment. And so our DDSB workforce census, our DDSB workforce census, will be completed this year in 2022 and will provide data on the impact of our equitable recruitment practices in diversifying our workforce as well. We want to ensure that this is our board is an environment for all, and all are respected, all are wanted in our organization. One of our focus as well is to build capacity. And so what we are going to do that is we want to work to support our students, our staff, our families, and our communities. We have programs for aspiring leaders, aspiring superintendent leaders, leaders networking opportunities, and mentoring. And we offer leading and learning opportunities not only for our classroom teachers, but for all leaders, such as members in the corporate departments, clerical, educational assistants, custodians, early childhood. We want to build capacity at all levels with the initiatives that we will be focusing on for the next year. So opportunities for informal and formal leadership learning is essential because we all play a role in supporting student achievement and belonging in this organization. And then we want to focus on grassroots innovation. Innovation is not just from the top down. We want to make sure at the all levels of the system, our employees have the opportunity to have their voices heard and to continue to focus on effective communication and building opportunities for consultation, feedback, as they develop and implement new initiatives within departments, within schools, and at the system level. We learn and improve through collaboration between departments and stakeholders. And that's a focus, again, for this year, is that collaboration between departments in our system. Student learning and well-being, the other foci for our next year of implementation of our operational goals. So Indigenous, you'll notice Indigenous education keeps coming up on every slide because learning about Indigenous knowledge systems, truth, the histories, and contributions benefit all students and must be present in all curriculum areas as we continue to actively engage in reconciliation and eliminate anti-Indigenous racism and discrimination in our schools. So there's going to be ongoing learning for all our members in our organization. Educators, central staff, managers will engage in Indigenous learnings. Mental health and well-being, we know that is a huge focus as well, especially during this pandemic that we're all going through, and I'm hoping that we're seeing the end of it. We'll see the end of it shortly. But we are committed to fostering and the foundational conditions throughout our board that support positive well-being and mental health for both staff and students. Because we know when students feel welcomed and included, staff base their practice upon that understanding, and when schools strive to foster and maintain collaborative partnerships with the home and the community, we create the optimal conditions for all students to thrive and reach their potential. So mental health is going to be really an important focus for us as well during this next year. I'll just go back, I skipped. We look at the Black student success. That's also a focus and has been for the last couple of years. We know that we are going to continue to implement the actions outlined in the updated compendium of action for Black student success to ensure that Black students are learning in environments that affirm their identities, build on their strengths, and contribute to their well-being, but most importantly, protect them from anti-Black racism. We're going to continue to build organizational capacity in addressing and dismantling anti-Black racism at Durham District School Board. It's a focus for us, and we are intending to ensure that at all levels, again, that we're putting policies and practices in place to dismantle anti-Black racism. With our priority schools, our poverty strategy, we continue to envision ways of serving our priority schools to meet their unique needs. We have a partnership with Ontario Tech University, which gives a cohort of teacher candidates, an opportunity to learn about anti-oppressive teacher practices in selected priority schools around DDSB. And this cohort meets at Village Union Public School for a portion of their Bachelor of Education program, and they engage in their practicum. And in DDSB priority schools, that's where they will do their practicum. So it's really an important partnership that we have with Ontario Tech University that's going to service our and help with our poverty reduction strategy. Equitable resource allocation. This is always something that we're talking about to make sure that we align our funding where our priorities are. And in an effort to align and allocate resources with an equity lens, conversations and planning have begun at the senior level. The intention is to create interdepartmental working groups in order to inform a transparent process for determining what data will be used to drive certain staff and financial allocations. So it's not just, it won't just be a one model fits all. We're going to really look at our schools and assign allocations to where the needs are. So I think that certainly is a push in the right direction. And it's hoped that the outcome will provide equity of access for all of our students as we endeavor to align our resources where the priorities are. Student learning and well-being. Our recently updated school climate survey gives us some insight into what we need to do better. And we continue to foster meaningful relationships, positive spaces, and work climate so that everyone will feel safe. Student voice, hugely important. We will also be soliciting student voice through surveys and focus groups. We want to know what happens after the learning and what the impact is for students because they are at the center of the work that we do. So we are going to be engaging student voice throughout the year and the next year to ensure that we are impacting them where we need to and that we are being responsive to their needs. And then, of course, we have our proactive anti-bullying practices to help to create that positive school climate that allows students to feel safe. When students and staff develop meaningful relationships, students not only feel valued, but they also feel safe and they thrive. As a district, we encourage students to talk to any staff at their school that they feel comfortable with to report bullying that is happening to them or to someone else that they are able to access. Students, parents, and community members can also report incidents of bullying, as you know, through the online tool that we have, Report Bullying Now. Parent engagement, that's us. This year, we're working with this team. You are part of our operational goals for the next year. We will continue to support, encourage, and enhance meaningful parent engagement at the school level and at the board level by undertaking a variety of parent engagement opportunities to improve student outcomes, which is part of our discussion tonight here, some of the events that we are planning to increase that engagement with our parents. Global competencies. The development of global competencies supports all students to reach high levels of achievement and to acquire the knowledge, skills, and values they need to become personally successful and actively engaged citizens. It's that inquiry process is really important in global competencies, and engaging student voice, creative thinking, and civic responsibility. Those are some of the things that we will be focusing on in our classes in our board. Indigenous education, again, this year the grade 11 First Nations, Métis and Inuit Voice English course was introduced into 9 secondary schools as part of the phase 1 rollout of the curriculum. It's a curriculum mandated by the ministry. The course focuses on building relationships with an emphasis on student voice in text selection. So it's no longer the teacher as the sage on the stage, but it's that collaborative environment that the teacher needs to create with the students so that the course is very responsive to their needs, and there are multiple ways of learning and demonstrating their learning. Also, we saw this year with the math curriculum the introduction of the grade 9 de-streamed mathematics, and the initial data from the midterm show that this course has been effective in raising the bar for students and providing all students, regardless of potential pathways, with the opportunity to learn together in their grade 9 year. So that's been revolutionary in some of our schools, and we know that implementing a de-streamed math ensures that the equity of access for all students. And also this year in our high schools, we saw the introduction of 3 new specialist high skills major programs, including a transportation and a nonprofit science and technology program at Dunbarton High School, and a new information and communication technology at Pickering High School as well. These new programs are part of the 68 total programs in our school board that allows students to increase their knowledge of and support their pathway as they plan and transition from high school to post-secondary or to the workforce. So also we approach this school year in relationship to science and technology, engineering and mathematics offerings with a focus on encouraging participation in STEM activities and in courses to increase representation in STEM-related careers and pathways for previously underrepresented groups. So 2 programs that we want to highlight is our engineering partnership with Ontario Tech University at Glen Street and Da Vinci Public School, and a partnership with Durham Black Educators Network to offer virtual STEM club for elementary grade 6 and 7 students who identify as Black. In partnership with the Indigenous Knowledge Keepers, DDSB Treaty Partners, and the Indigenous Education Department, the Indigenous Outdoor Education Coach and Outdoor Education Team are revamping all outdoor education programs and resources to ensure that they're inclusive of Indigenous knowledge systems with a focus on learning on and from the land. And as you can see, that Indigenous education learning is woven throughout our operational goals for the next year. Our early years, finally, this year we are deploying early year teacher support to come alongside our K-3 educators to identify where structures in our learning environments allow students to thrive and where structures may prevent barriers, with teams working together to dismantle those barriers. So we have a very ambitious program, but it certainly is doable because we will be collaborating, interdepartmental collaboration that will help us ensure that the process and the growth and the learning is seamless. But of course, monitoring is going to be very important because we know that what we monitor is really what will get done. And as we're monitoring, we want to listen to the experiences of our students and staff and families. And we'll be considering key reflections of representation, who is and who's not reflected in the work and the progress that is made. We want to make sure that human rights and Indigenous rights and anti-oppressive structures are being dismantled or being highlighted. And so we want to make sure that we align what we're doing with the priorities that we have as a system. We want to make sure that whatever we're doing is going to impact our students in the way that we are expecting them to be impacted. And we want to make sure that we want to be very timely in our sharing of the impact with our community, with our so that you are aware of the progress and can see the progress that we're making as a board. And decision making, when and what changes can we make? It's that assess and reflect, and to ensure that we're meeting challenges and addressing issues as they arise. So it's a very ambitious operational goals, especially in light of the pandemic and in light of the fact that we're working on teacher absences, which I must say, have been able to overcome that challenge with a lot of the hiring that we've been doing as a system. So we're not experiencing the rates of teacher absences as other boards, because we have been proactive, and we are really a board that is at the forefront of proactivity, is what I would call it. And so we're very grateful that we have a team of workers at the board that collaborating through all these departments to make sure that we can achieve equitable outcomes for all of our students. So that's just a really high level summary of our report. And if you want more information, we can certainly provide you with the link to our board meeting so that you can see exactly some of the other things that we will be doing to ensure that we have equitable outcomes for all students. So at this time, before we go into the rest of our agenda, if you have any questions at this time to pose, now's the time to ask, and then we can move forward with our agenda. Questions? Any questions at all? Oh, I can't see, because I'm going to stop sharing actually so I can see questions, and then
I'm not seeing anything in the chat, Margaret.
Okay. Thank you.
Margaret,
Yeah.
it's Ted. Just a quick question. When you say this year, are we talking about the calendar January to December year, or is this the school year that?
It's a school year. This year is a school year, but we are extending this operational goal to the end of 2023, given the pandemic, because we've had to really pull back on a lot of things like professional development for our staffing because of the high teacher absence. And we were not able to fill, at the beginning of the year, we were unable to fill some of those absences. And so, but now we did a really huge push on hiring. And it was even reported in the news a few months ago. And we've hired, I think, over 400 supply teaching staff. And we've been able to nip that absence in the bud so that our classes are running at the level that they should be with regards to teacher attendance.
Okay, thank you.
Jim, do you have a question?
No, I do not.
Okay. Any other questions about the report? It is very ambitious, and we have some of our staff here who are part of some of this integration that we're doing, and they can tell you there's some really neat things that we're doing in our schools. We have cohorts for anti-Black racism. We have schools that are doing inquiry at the ground level to see what they can do to change, what structures they need to change to ensure that we have equitable outcomes for all students. It's a phenomenal time to be, I think, a leader in our board. And we are at the cutting edge because we're always asked by other boards to give feedback on what we are doing. Just the other day, I've been asked to collaborate in a podcast with KPR and to let them know some of the things that we are doing, because they hear that we are doing some amazing things in the area of Indigenous learning, anti-Black racism, and equity, culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. And we have on our call Leandra, who's really really great at pulling different facets of the work together and ensuring that our teachers are receiving some of the instruction that they need to make sure that our students are achieving well. And Carolyn Waters, these are all, so she's a vice principal now, but she was a central coach and was able to, I worked with her and was able to achieve great things for our teachers as well as for our students. Kristen, you have a question.
Yeah, I'm just wondering in general if there has been a push, I'm sure there has been, but for more hiring of more visible, like BIPOC. I asked in particular because my son's high school, like Black Student Association, he was a little disappointed because it's not a Black person running it. It's, to say, like, lack of better terminology. So like for him, a person who like identifies as a Black male, it was a little disappointing that this club that he was so excited to join, because his high school actually has a bigger population of visible minorities, that wasn't led by somebody of his, like, that he connected with. Not that it's not a great group.
Absolutely, because we know our allies are just as important as having if you don't have a minority, somebody visible minority, or a racialized person, I shouldn't say minority, but a racialized person in that position, an ally who's really passionate about the work is better than having no one do it at all. But certainly we do have a push on hiring racialized people, Indigenous people, because it's important that our students have in the classrooms teachers who look like them and certainly can lead some of those programs that you're talking about, because we do believe nothing for us without us. So your son is really keen that he senses that already. But we have, I know when I started in the principalship in this board, we were three racialized Black principals, and now we have 36. So there has been a push for administrators as well as for teachers. We have actively as a board in 2018, we actually did a hiring fair just for racialized people. But if any of the cultures that attended, they were not turned away. But it was really a focus on making sure that we can get more of our racialized and Indigenous workers into our board. So we have a long ways to go. Absolutely, we're not even close. But certainly the goal is to have teachers in our buildings who look like and represent the students. Any other questions?
I just had a quick question. There's a lot of emphasis on Indigenous education throughout for the educators, and I know I honestly found out this year that we had leads that have been present for the past 10 years, but I did not know as a parent until I had to deal with an incident with my son when he tried to show that he's an ally with the Indigenous community at the beginning of the year. And I felt like that there's still some education that is still lacking, or it's not trickling down quick enough in regards to how we can show that we're allies and what's acceptable and not acceptable. So I'm just wondering, how is the education going to be consistent from school to school? Because we as a family were affected in a negative way in the beginning, where there was misinformation being spread, and the top of the school understood what should or should not happen, but it felt like as if the staff was still very much in the shadows. Just to make sure it doesn't happen again next year, because there's always new students coming in and coming out. So just in regards to that.
And you've hit the key issue here is we've trained our administrators. Because of COVID, it's been so hard to release our teachers for some of this additional training. I know that last year our DDSB at home teachers were able to receive a lot of the training, but because of the in-person school with the lack of teachers to supply, because if we have to train our teachers, we have to release them from their classes, and then we have to put in the supply teachers. We have not been able to do that the last year and a bit because of the pandemic. And so we're hoping that, not hope, because hope is never a strategy, but we know that with training of our principals and we've trained them, and now they are to, in their staff meetings, bring that learning to their teachers in that way, so that learning is given to the frontline workers, because you are right, the teachers are at the center. They're at the front of the work with our students, and so that's one way we are doing it, is training our principals, and then they in turn will, when they have staff meetings or create a timetable within the school to release their teachers, they can train them as well. But we are really pushing this, because with the human rights policy coming out, we know that our parents will be armed with that, and we want to uphold the rights of all of our students, and so we need to make sure our teachers are trained so that we can be responsive to the needs of all of our students at this time. But we are working on that, getting filtering down the training to our teachers, which is the most difficult part. But we have some of our teachers on this line who are working with, we've got 46 schools where they're having that one-on-one relationship with the central staff and with our equity staff to build capacity in the area of anti-oppressive training. And so it is happening, not in all of our schools at the same time, because we don't have that capacity yet, but it has started. That training has started. Okay. All right. I think we can proceed with the rest of our agenda. I'm going to put the agenda back up because I don't remember where we are either. See if I can get it back up. back to the agenda if I can get there. Okay, and I'm going to leave Jim now to take over.
Thank you, Art. So we just have some upcoming updates. Keep an eye out for the new PIC newsletter coming out. Program applications are due this month, so they'll be being reviewed as well. Our team is working on our upcoming parent engagement series, as well as our Parents as Partners team. And we will now be moving into our subcommittee.
But before we move that, could we, Jim, could we ask our subcommittees just to let the others know? Because, I mean, Jim, we know what's going on, but some of the other members may not know what's happening in the other groups. So before they move in to do some further planning, if they would get an update from each of the groups would be, I think, helpful at this time.
Perfect. Do we have somebody that can give an update for the PIC newsletter team?
The newsletter team. Kristen?
Yeah, so we met, I believe, last week or the week before, and basically came up with the ideas that we thought were pertinent to parents for around this time. So I think myself and Huma are both putting together some March break activities and some activities to do while, unfortunately, if you're in isolation at home. And then some bigger topics that are being touched on, like the human rights policy that's coming out on the top of my mind.
And the mental health, we talked also, I received the article from Stephanie Palbor. She works in our with our wellness, mental health and wellness. And she's already submitted her article on tips for children to stay mentally healthy. So that's also coming out in the article, in the newsletter.
And I think we had to talk about maybe Bikwame, more of a kind of an extension from what she had started last year with the anti-Black racism. So I think we've given ourselves a deadline of the 11th, so this Friday, to have everything handed in, and then hopefully ready for a newsletter in the near future.
Yep. Thank you for that.
Perfect. We can move on to somebody from the program application team, please.
Hello, everybody. So far we have had, can everyone hear me? I just want to double check my mic is working. Yes. Okay. We have had a presentation explaining the process of ProGrant, and we have hosted guests who were successful last year during the ProGrant process, and they have inspired multiple participants to get started with writing their ProGrant proposals. The proposals are due on Friday, February 18th. So what we'll do today in the subcommittee meeting in the breakout room is perhaps discuss a timeline of when we shall review the proposals and decide on allotting the grant money to each grant proposal.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. And can I have somebody from the Parent Engagement Series team, please, for an update?
Maybe that. No, Parent Engagement, that's James. James here?
I am here. I understood we are Parents as Partners.
As partners, you're the Parent Engagement Series, Frank.
I don't want to steal your thunder, Frank.
Oh, no. Ted, do you want to speak? Do you want me to speak?
Well, you can talk about the victim services people you've been in touch with.
Thanks, Ted. So I've reached out to Julia Cusato, who is the person who I found at Durham Police Services, who's involved in victim services. And we just have to be a little bit careful, because they run a session like the one that we want to run every month. It's open to the general public. And recently, Margaret and I and Manon saw an email from Positive School Climates in our own board promoting one of these events. So what we're offering is not new, but Julia has said that it can be run through us. So we will be able to take registration, ask questions, etc., etc. And now that we know that there are other sessions like this, we're going to go ahead and choose a date. I think I gave some suggestions to Margaret, which took into account either the start or the end of Ramadan. And I didn't see anything else on the calendar. If Julia can accommodate those dates, then our next step will be creative services and getting the message out. And obviously through Manon, we'll let everyone on this committee know what's happening. But I have to tell you, she was absolutely obliging, willing to do it, willing to run it through our Zoom link. It was a pleasure to work with her. Ted, do you want to, there's not much else to say, but do you want to speak about the SCC?
Yeah, that too, and Frank, and I'll just reiterate what you said. I've been to a couple of SCC meetings in the past week or so, and this topic of trafficking is a huge topic. And I think the more that we can get across to our parent community, either through local SCCs, through the parent engagements, and throughout and I didn't realize they ran this thing on a monthly basis, but specifically, because Durham apparently is one of the, unfortunately, one of the top areas in the country for this, and I specifically heard talks about Oshawa Mall being a hotbed as well. So the more information we can get out, all the better. With the SCCs, Frank and I did discuss about, and I gave him a whole bunch of ideas that I think that we can help engage more and more of our SCCs in, and it's just from learning how very simple things to running meetings to understanding finances a little bit. My favorite thing is we always ask our elementary schools to engage in some sort of fundraising, but I've also talked about, well, let's talk about budgeting at the school board level, just to say, well, we'd like you to raise this money, but here's how the money is allocated, here's how it's spent, not down to the nitty-gritty, but kind of high level. So when they think about, fundraising, it's like, oh, okay, there are some gaps, as we know, so just more education for them. So, and how to, generally just run meetings in general, take minute taking, that type of thing. So I think if we gave all our parents these tools, we'd have more and more, when someone says, can somebody chair this meeting, we'd probably get more hands up. So, and they wouldn't be scared of it. That's still to come, though.
And that's important. And I know that we don't have voices from the North, but myself and Scott and Trustee Morton, we have been visiting all the schools in the North for SCC, just for a 10-minute presentation to see if we can get some of their voices on this committee. And then I must say, the last one I went to, they were excited. And I'm thinking next year, Scott, we're probably going to have some voices from the North. And keep my fingers crossed. But we're just taking a tour of the North, and we go on for 10 minutes. We do a pitch for the committee, and so hopefully next year we'll have some voices from the North, so that, as Ted said, if they're armed with the knowledge, then they know exactly what they're signing up to do. It's great.
Perfect. Thanks, Margaret, and thank you, Ted. And can we have somebody from the Parents as Partners Committee, please?
Absolutely. I'm good to speak to that. It's James Klodnicki. I'm the proud principal of Donald A. Wilson Secondary School. I have to say, selfishly, formerly, like 7 days ago, was up at Brock High School, and absolutely thrilled to hear that Margaret and the team are going up to the North to engage the SCCs. There are some really keen folk up there who really want to be part of things, but that physical separation does become a hindrance. So that's awesome. We had our fabulous first meeting, and thanks to the steering committee members who were able to attend. And I do invite, because Kristen, Jim, Frank, and Manal were on that call, to add anything in that I missed. But we had a great, if very busy conversation about dates and details. Our tentative date right now for the conference itself is the 18th of May. We did have some discussions about inclusive and equitable branding, which, Margaret, I'm not sure if Manal got to speak to you, but I'll be bringing that forward to you later. And basically, as an outline, we're looking at having a keynote speaker and then doing breakout sessions around the topic of relationships and conflict management. And I'm trying to remember, I think Margaret referenced this before in the meeting about the fact that we've got a number of students who are incredibly brave behind, yes, it's a BlackBerry, but brave behind the keyboard of their device. And they don't know how to repair that relationship when they've ruined it. If they've made some awful comments, how do you in person deal with the fact that you've made a mistake? How do you own it? How do you fix it? How do you move on from it? How do you make sure you're not revisiting it over and over again? So we had some great conversations about how to make this as inclusive as we possibly can in terms of the breakout sessions that we're planning, speaking to the lens of Indigenous students, as Margaret spoke to in the plan, as well as Black and racialized students, students from the 2S LGBTQIA plus community. So it was a really exciting meeting. We've got another meeting booked. Oh, Jim, help me. Is it next week? I think that we're booked for the next one. I want to say next week.
I believe so, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Next Wednesday. Awesome. Hey, and the group's jumping in, so that's perfect. So yeah, we're excited to see where this goes. We are talking about a couple other options in terms of the possibility of a food layer here, which is one more thing that I have on my agenda to chat with Margaret about. But we had some great feedback about that. So it's exciting, and the ball is getting rolling. We know that we're coming up tight for time, but because it's a virtual event, I'm very confident that we'll be able to get this through and get this going. So that's where we're at right now. Probably more than you needed to know, but that's where we're at.
Okay.
That's great. Thanks, James.
Jim, do you mind if I add something?
For sure, of course.
Thank you. And Margaret, I'm not sure if this has crossed your desk yet, but James led a really powerful discussion this afternoon as to whether we should consider a possible name change. And the question was, are we parents? Is this the Parent Involvement Committee, or is there another name that would possibly be more inclusive of, say, caregivers, grandparents, caring adults, etc.? And James, you can probably say it better than I can, but the thinking is that if we do consider that, then the next logical step would be maybe to rename the PIC into something else if we want to go that route. And I don't believe in surprises, so I'm just throwing this out this evening, but I think it's a longer discussion.
Yeah. So the Parent Involvement Committee is a ministry. It's a ministry mandated committee. I'm not sure. I can certainly look into that, see if we can call it something else. I'm not sure that we can, but it is a ministry mandated committee, and we have a policy, and we're reviewing the policy right now, the Parent Involvement Committee policy, because it's mandated by Regulation 612 of the Education Act and the Ontario regulations. So I'm not thinking that we can change the name, but certainly when we are, in light of what you said, when we are looking at the policy and redoing the policy, and where we have the word parent, because we wanted to change that. But once again, parent is what is in the ministry document, but in definitions, we are rejigging our policy format. And so we have a definitions section of the policy where it says parent, and it includes parent, guardians, caregivers. But I'm not sure, but I can look into that because certainly parent involvement is not inclusive. It's not an inclusive term.
And that was what came up. So I have a solution. We could do what the artist formerly known as Prince did, and we could be the Parent Involvement Committee, or we could be the Caregiver Committee, formerly known as the Parent Involvement Committee, or AKA. I mean, I don't want to be silly, but we can find a cosmetic change if we think that that's what's necessary. And James was so good in terms of handling the equity and inclusion piece, which got down to the slice level of pizza, may I just assure you, just in case some people are anti-pizza. although I've never met anyone who's anti-pizza, maybe anti-gluten. But anyway, so I don't want to make this an Emperor's New Clothes discussion, but that was what was going on this afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
Is that fair, James?
Thanks, Frank. Yeah, no, I think that would be fair. And yeah, I'm looking forward to having a deeper discussion with Margaret about it. But the points you brought up are very valid. We want to be as inclusive as possible. We don't want people to feel that they are not included in a conference because of the title of that conference. Hence the, can we do some rebranding? Can we make it work so that our parents and our communities and the affinity groups that support us are open to attending? So yes, more to be discussed.
I would think it's a deeper discussion for sure. And I would think our subcommittees, we can probably call them whatever we want to call them, because the ministry doesn't give any direction about it. Just says you can establish subcommittees if you want. So it doesn't give direction on the names of our committees. So that certainly be something we could look at, the name, renaming or rebranding the subcommittees. But I'm not sure that the Parent Involvement Committee, that we have any latitude over that.
That's fantastic news. So that will be what we will be working on in our breakout session, which is what are we going to rename ourselves, is one of the big things. So thank you. That's awesome.
Okay. Thank you for sharing, everyone. Jim?
Perfect. That was a great discussion. Thanks, James, Frank, and Margaret. So I guess now at this time, we'll be moving into our PIC subcommittee breakout rooms for approximately 10 minutes. So we'll see that come up on the screen shortly. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. So now we're going to move on to our group discussion. We'd like to have a discussion on what parents and guardians would like to see or easily find on the DDSB website.
So thank you for introducing that, Jim. We had thought that to ask our parents on the panel, what is it that you'd like us to see on our parent engagement site, or even just on the DDSB website, that would be helpful to you to maneuver our system? Or what information are you looking for when you want and you can't find it? And so we just want to have a brief discussion about that, if for our parents especially, on this. When you're looking for information, what kind of information do you want to see on our parent involvement page and on the board website that you're not seeing? Kristen.
So I think I looked at the question differently. First, I thought it was that we were just to go on the website and kind of search, or how easily it was to find the parent involvement. So on that piece, I just feel like it says, I guess it was like, what if not, the parent involvement isn't on the first screen, right? On the DDSB, it's like you have to click something else and then you go into something. So I always find, like, if you want to draw people, like if there had been like a button or a clickbait right away, not get involved, and then it shows you the PIC. I don't know. There's something that there's like a broad term, and then you could. So I wouldn't know if I was going searching. Like I was looking for the parent involvement, and I actually put parent involvement in the search bar, and then that's how I kind of got to it.
Okay.
So in that sense, if it could be on like the first screen, or parent involvement, like I don't know, I didn't find
an easier way to get to parent involvement information for our parents. An easy way.
Like
yeah. Go on.
And then I was just in general, we were just in a breakout room with Frank, and I, as a parent, if you're asking me like generally what kind of information I'm looking for, like more about we're just talking about how there's so many like experts within the board that are like, you know, for special education, or for like the person who the Indigenous like lead is, or like I would like contacts or information about all these great initiatives, because I don't think, like, I even just when you mentioned about the bullying like hotline, I don't ever remember being told. I now remember that it is like, it says something about bullying on like the webpage for my school, but I didn't really make the connection that was there. So I think there's so many great initiatives. You just spoke about so many of them in your own like little blurb, like when we started, and I don't think parents know about half of them. So like, I don't know how you get that, but like I want to know about all the great committees and like who I would contact to find out more. That's the kind of thing I guess I'm going with.
That's good.
I'm also curious if there's a way for parents to find out what programs are offered at specific schools, because there were a number of programs that you mentioned that were quite impressive. For example, you mentioned that you're integrating a new science program specifically for Black students in grade 6. So how instead of just Pardon?
How would parents know that?
Yeah, exactly. Instead of just word of mouth, because it seems like parents talk to other parents and they say, okay, go to this school, this has this program. Maybe there could be information, explicit information with each school. Also, the STEM programs sound phenomenal. I didn't even know that there was a STEM program at Pickering High. So I'm sure that would be valuable information for parents.
And it could be that as a group here that we might want to create something that we can give to parents and provide a link on the board's website on a more easily accessible parent involvement page that would give them some of the information that you're looking at. That might be something we might want to look at as well, if as something that we could do as a committee. Good, those are good suggestions. Any other? What as a parent, when you're looking for something, what would you like to see on the website, or an information. I know we have, and I think Manon had sent out the parent information brochure or something like that. I forget what it is called. And she'd sent it out, and we were looking at seeing if it needed to be updated. So you can take a look at that again, and we can come back. We can come back to that.
Margaret, I think it was the Welcome to DDSB booklet, at least that's what I see. So we worked on that last year, one of the subcommittees of this committee, and found it to be extremely challenging to distill down into a booklet what was there. And I think it felt at times like we were just picking pieces off the website and then putting them into a separate booklet. So I like this notion of how do we ensure that the website is more easily accessible to families. I think that's probably a more efficient way of dealing with this rather than creating an additional I was on the committee that wrote the document, so that's where I'm coming from, is that I always felt like the document maybe was just an extra step. But if the website was a little bit easier to manage, it might be helpful. So I'm in an elementary school, we have kids transitioning from grade 8 to grade 9. I was looking on the website for materials to share with a parent around transitioning from grade 8 to grade 9. I did that search in the search bar, found nothing. It took me a lot of time to dig around to find where to get that information for the family. And even then, you had to scroll so far down that I gave them the link, but I had to give the instructions, keep scrolling to the bottom of the page, because when we look at websites, we don't always do that, right? And then you can feel like you're not finding the information that you need. So that's just my input.
Yeah, so the web's easy accessible to the parent involvement, but the information that parents want needs to be accessible as well. Ted.
Great ideas, but I think we need to take one step back, and instead of asking our parents to go to the board's website, that we make it a little more ingenious with our local schools. So when I look at, our high schools, it actually says families. And when I scroll down to families, it says parent engagement. So, I mean, if we make it easier there, it might be harder for us to clean up the DDSB's website, but if we get better links from the local level, that our parents are, because I think we have a little more flexibility in changing the local school's website as opposed to the boards. And as someone was saying about, under families, you can look in grade 8 transition, have a click there to move on, stuff for courses or programs there. If we do it at the local level, we might get more traction. And again, we don't want our parents to have to think, well, okay, where do I need to go for this? And if they have the question, and that 2 or 3 click rule, if I click more than 2 or 3 times, then I'm done. So maybe we look at it at that sense of, because I've looked at an elementary and a secondary, it all says families. And from there, we can add our different things there and just point it to where it is on the board.
Okay, that's a good idea. Kristen? And I'm watching our time because we are to end at 8.
My only add for that is that I feel like then that could be inequitable, because if one school does a great web page that has all their stuff on it and then one school doesn't update it often, then I might not get the information. So I think it has to be your main site, because then everybody can reach that. If you leave it up to the school, we just talked about the trickle down. Not everyone trickles down the same, or doesn't prioritize the same things. So I think that I would argue that if you did it, I understand why you'd want to do it that way, but some schools who have a great team who is in charge of the website, or the SCC does the website or whatever, that one school might have a fabulous one and one might not have a great one.
So,
yeah, recognizing that the board's website, they can push information out to the schools. So if we compile it on the main website, we can ask that it be pushed out to the board, because they can do that. They can push things out. That's why if you look at all the websites, most of the schools, they all look alike, because we recognized that a few years back that there was disparities and some had really amazing sites, and some schools, probably like my school, was like a crappy site because I'm not techie. And so they wanted to make it all sort of seamless and to dispel that inequity. And so I know that the board can push things out. So so that would be helpful, even if we have it on the main site, because some people only ever go to the main site. But certainly to push it out to the school's website would be something that would be beneficial, I would think. And I saw Carolyn, you would, and then you.
I was just going to say the same thing. I think it needs to be something that's centrally done and pushed out to us, because as the website manager at my school, I'll tell you, you'd be highly disappointed if you were to visit it. I am working on it, but it is not yet done.
Yes, I know. Yeah, as a principal, I can relate hugely. Any other thoughts before we close out our program today? Frank.
Thanks. I did a little bit of research into this, and maybe Andrew can back me up, or parents go to school websites for two things only: the calendar and the list of emails to get in touch with their children's teachers.
So finish your statement. And so are you saying that we should really use the main website, or not even a website at all?
No, I'm not. I think that it's a really good idea, but I don't think we've cracked the code as to how to reach parents where they are at the moment, and that's a real challenge. Margaret, I'm not sure if you were part of this group when I suggested that the board should create a one-stop shop, like Kristen referred to it as like a 311. So you can call one number at the board and ask any question, and that person will know or will get back to you. And the same thing on the website. Like, I think the websites could be improved just by improving the search function. So at the moment, the search function is, I'm not saying, yeah, Kristen, I like what you're saying, a service navigator role. Maybe we could create the idea of parent ambassadors, or a parent ambassador at the board whose sole function is to guide parents to where they need to go or who to contact. Like I love Kristen's idea about our own experts talking to parents. And this is my own anecdote, but in my experience, parents who know more get more. So if you know what an IEP is, or what an IPRC is, or what demands you could make, or what requests, you can get more for your children. That's not fair. So what can we do to change this? And I'm jumping all over the place. So let me come back. Let's improve the search functionality of the websites. The information's there. It's hard to find. So maybe Google spiders need to get access to the board's website so that you can put a Google search on the board's website. I don't know about privacy. I can't answer that question, but I'm convinced the information's there. We just need to be able to find it.
Okay, Uma?
Just something quick. I was thinking a way for people to find out how to deal with conflict resolution and the basic human rights of students and parents and administrators, the educators. I feel like emotions sometimes are flying a little too high, especially with COVID and how we can't, caregivers can't enter the school anymore. So communication is sometimes hindered. So people are too quick to go onto WhatsApp. Unfortunately, I even heard the threat of going to the paper because something was not being resolved in accordance to how a certain caregiver thought this year. So just a way of how we deal with conflict resolution in a way that we're not overstepping the rights of our children, who are the students and the ones who need to be focused on the most. So I find that's hard to find at the board, on the board websites and our school websites. So just how we can rectify that maybe.
So we do have a new signage that we've given to our and in service our principals on respectful communication in the workplace. And because you are right, tempers are heightened, and people flying off the handle very quickly these days. And so we are asking our principals to work on that with their parent community on respectful communication in the environment. So. We're going to have a last comment, and then we will wrap up for this evening. Censor Rana.
Hi, at SEAC, we have asked or requested changes to the DDSB website. We also feel it's clunky and it's hard to find what you want. There's a lot of great stuff there, but to find it is the problem. What we learned is every change is very laborious on our end. It's a lot of bugging, pestering, reminding that this thing needs to be done on the tech side. So when we think of whatever it is that we need to change, we need to think of it in the future, because it's going to be hard to change it again if we think of something, right? So let's keep brainstorming until we come up with the right idea.
I agree, because just to get the website we did was a lot of work. It was years in the making to move to the new format. So you're right. Final thoughts? Okay, Jim, I'll leave you to end our meeting today.
Perfect. That was some great conversations. Thank you, Margaret. So we'd like everybody to join us for our next meeting. It will be April 13th at 6:30 p.m. And information will be sent out from your school and online as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And just know, team, I may be calling on you to look at this website thing so we can put a proposal into the communications department to see what we can do to make it better for our parents. Okay, so thank you so much for coming, as Jim said, and we see you in April. But keep working behind the scenes on your programs. Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Goodbye.
Good night, everyone.